If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and you guessed it, it's free. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey, what's up? Pieces of a Nation listeners, what is going on? This is Richard Chu. Thanks for showing up again. Today, we have an awesome guy, man. This is my buddy Roy Vongtama, and he just wrote a book called Healing Before You're Cured. He's also an oncologist, an actor. He also plays an actor on TV. A doctor on TV, he's a really good friend of mine, man. And he's, I think we met 15 years ago?
A long time ago.
Was it 15 years ago?
Yeah, it was about then.
Right. I think we met on set or something. We were both what are we doing? We're doing, what is that movie called? Something about something in the future.
Oh, GB 2020.
GB 2020.
I was like, what?
Right. Dude, that was an amazing time, man. That was an amazing time, man. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well, dude. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Dude, thank you for taking your time out, because I know you're super busy. And
of course, man.
I mean, you got being a doctor, you got being an author, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're short on time. We have I want to be able to utilize this time with you.
Okay.
So let's just jump to this, man. Healing before you're cured.
Right.
What is that about?
Well, okay. So you're right. So it is it's an interesting title, because grammatically it doesn't really make any sense. But people are like, what does that mean? But it means it's supposed to give you that feeling like, what? Yeah. Healing before you're cured. It's a book, it's a guide about to help people in an evidence-based way, because I'm a medical doctor, right? But I'm also an artist as well, so I wanted to find a way to take the evidence, the scientific evidence, and use all my training, from medical school and all the research. I've done 26 years of research and all this stuff.
Wow.
Just since I was a teenager. I've always been doing research on treatment and cancer and healing, and I wanted to find a way to make it accessible for people, especially people who are already kind of in the Western system and they wanted to explore more. That was the reason for this guide. And so it's basically an evidence-based guide to taking control of your body and mind. So it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's all the evidence on how I call them the houses of health: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
Got it.
And how each house interconnects and functions with the other, and the evidence behind it. So the simplest example I can give you is if you've ever been worried about something and you get a headache, right? Or you're worried about something, you get a stomach ache.
Right.
That's the mental house affecting the physical house, right? So not only does it affect it negatively, but also affects it positively, right? So there's research on affirmations, saying positive things in your mind. People who do that have an increased immune system, increased white cell count. So you can actually influence your body by the way you use your mind. And that's just an example of the mental to the physical, right? But there's other ones. There's emotional to physical, there's spiritual to physical, there's spiritual, mental, emotional to physical. And so there's a lot of different ways in this works. And I found that people, I would meet with patients and they'd be like, you should write a book, you should do something about this. And so I decided, okay. So 7 years ago, I started writing this book.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And then, amidst all the other things I'm doing, I really felt like it was worth it to finish. Sometimes you get halfway through something, you're like, I'm like, no, once I start something and I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to finish it. Right. So I'm trying to keep my word about that. Right. So this just finished it this year. And I'm really excited. We debuted it on Amazon. And we debuted #1 for ebooks for nonprofit, and then non-fiction, not nonprofit. I said nonprofit because we did a book launch, and we did it to raise money for a nonprofit to help youth meditation.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of like the genesis was the inspiration was to find a way to help people access this knowledge, but also coming from a place where it wasn't like, like super left field, you know.
Right.
So
it's interesting because it sounds like because you wanted to have pure evidence, right, with health, right? Mm-hmm. It also sounds like you were extracting from a really metaphysical, plane, because you wanted to merge that together in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm a true believer in that too. Like, saying affirmations and really just like calling out to the universe, if you will, right?
Sure.
And being able to create that sound of cause and effect in a way, right?
Yep.
Because I think you're right. Because, with how I love how you broke. I love how you broke down the you said the 3 houses.
4 houses.
4 houses, right?
Yeah.
I love how you broke that down because it really just compartmentalizes the way we can adapt this to our lives.
Yes.
A lot easier, right?
Yes, and that's what because initially I started talking about like it's all one, and then people are like, people are like, what? They can't. You can't access that. I mean, you could. Richard could.
Yeah.
Richard could. But a lot of other people, were like, wait, what do I focus on? How do I pick one thing? And it becomes overwhelming. So. Even this book, some people were coming back, wow, there's a lot of information.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really try to make accessible. Even we did an audiobook so you could listen to it, and I actually narrated it. But I found even more, like we had to, so I'm building this free email course that pairs with a book so you can identify which house is the house that needs the most work. So
wow.
So you take this quiz, and through this course, you'll figure out which house is the one you really need to focus on. So, because if you look at the data on book reading, people read the first 3 chapters and they stop, right? I'm like, well, if that happens with this book, they're not going to get to the part they need to see. So if you take this quiz first, you'll figure out which section to go to, and then you can read that third. And if you like the rest, you can read the rest.
Wow, that's great.
You know what I mean?
So can you break down the 4 houses?
Sure.
Okay.
So physical is I do break it down into 3 things. And I'm really about like outcome. I'm really about like what are you going to do that's going to change you, and what's going to be an enduring change. So there's really only 3 things in the physical house. There's the diet, there's exercise, and there's sleep. There's a bunch of other things around that, but those are the 3 that you need to be doing in that house. And so the mental house is what we're talking about, how you think and the way you process thoughts and what habits of thought you have going on. And the emotional house is more in depth, as you might think, and a lot of this area I've seen most people don't actually work on as much, but it involves your history with trauma, your history, how your current relationships are interplayed right now,
right.
And then any history of abuse in the past. So that's the emotional house, and also how you process emotions. If you look in the research, they say like there's basically about 7 emotions, basic ones.
Right.
So how are you accessing those? And they're like, oh, I don't do anger. I'm like, okay, well that's interesting because you have it. So then. Right. There's that. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not about. If you need a therapist, I'd send you away. Go to see a therapist. But
it's on record, man.
Yeah. And then the spiritual house. As you know, I'm a big meditator.
Yeah.
So the basis of that is meditation and how that affects you, but also relaxation, meditation, then also empathy and compassion. And how in the research though, this isn't just like a ethereal topic though. There's research on how empathy and compassion, how they affect the body and how they affect your immune system actually. So that's kind of all these a quick breakdown on the houses, just to give people an idea. I'm good with that. I'm good with this, or I'm not good with that. I'm not. So
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And just a little background. Roy has been guiding people in meditation for many years, right? And I took one of his guidance classes, and I just gotta say, I've meditated before, maybe for 15, 20 minutes, right? But this session was 3 hours long.
3 hours.
And it was really an opportunity to really see that little devilish function inside of me blimping, and I can see it during the 3rd hour, and it drove me crazy. So we had this interaction, but that's just something I wanted to share. Roy has been
share more. What's that little? What was it called? The little? What'd you call it? The little.
A devilish function, right?
Devilish function.
You know, the little devil buddy, right? That is sort of like, you know, it's like he's under the radar. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes with your whole emotional house, right? Where, you know, the experiences that I've had with certain people or certain relationships, right? Or just personal, it's stuck there. And when you think you're doing great and you're not looking, that little sucker will blindside you.
Well, you know, it's interesting because a lot of different traditions call that, you know, I personally don't, I call it the terrorist. Because it pops up in many different aspects. Like, you may be doing great, and like, no, well, maybe you're not doing so good. Maybe they don't really like you. Maybe they don't really, you know, or you're like, oh, just wait. You did good today, but you never know tomorrow, you know.
Right.
And then in meditation, you get, you know, you get to see what it's actually really doing to you. Right. And oftentimes, you know, I love how you call it devilish function, because it oftentimes is something that is there and we don't see, and it's actually working against us, right. You know. So it's like, but there's actually, this is why I love research, because they've shown people, if you train yourself to actually you know, hit 90 minutes a week of meditation, it improves you know, the outcome they would say is anxiety, and it shows a decrease in anxiety, decrease in depression, but an improved immune system. But also, then the other thing they found, like, that's spiritual to mental kind of transition, right? Right. But there's also a mental transition where you can train your mind, like you said, using affirmations. Right. If you take it like I always say, like, oh, like, everybody comes to me, they're like, oh, I want a prescription. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give you a prescription. Okay, say this phrase 10 times a day, or 3 periods of 10 repeats per day. And they're like, that's not a prescription. I'm like, oh, it is. You know, because the problem is in your mind. I can't give you a pill.
Right.
I'm not going to give you a pill. You know, I'm going to tell you, like, look, your problem's in your mind. Everything I say to you, you turn yourself into a victim.
Right.
So I want you to, you know, that's why I was excited to talk to you, because really the book is about all these things, but really it's about ownership. It's about ownership. It's about taking control, ownership of everything. It's not about blame, meaning, oh, I did this wrong in the past, now I'm a bad person, or it's not about guilt. It's not about shame, feeling bad for who you are, right? It's actually about ownership. It's saying, okay, this is what's going on with me.
Yeah.
Am I willing to take an objective, honest look at what I've been doing,
right,
my habits, and am I willing to change those things?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in talking with people who want to do that.
Right. It's essentially taking full responsibility of everything in your life.
Yes.
Right? And gaining that certain maturity in all 4 boxes, right? And especially the emotional box, right? I mean, you know, there are a lot of people out there who are suffering and not fully matured in a way where they can handle a setback, right? Because that terrorist, what you call it, or the devilish function, or little devil buddy, right? Like, they're there to kind of like shake you up a little bit. And if you don't have that emotional maturity, how are you going to handle it?
That's totally it. It's like, that's totally right. Like, the word that's popping in my mind as you're talking is resilience. You know, right. So there's actually a lot of research on resilience too. People who are very resilient, they do so much better in life, you know. And the thing is, you can learn it. So that's something I really try to get people, because they're like, oh, I'm not like that. Like, you know, I'm like, look, it's not that you're not like that. It's that you never learned it.
Yeah.
And so it's like taking the first step to going into that emotional house and saying, okay, well, let's see what's really going on here first, see what we're dealing with, and then work from that point.
I love where we're going with this. So learning resilience. This is a really interesting subject for me. So for you, how did you learn resilience?
Well, if you grew up in my house, you'd know how I learned it. You know, my mom's she's pretty hardcore. You know, and my parents are both doctors.
Wow.
Medical doctors, and if I wanted anything done or anything, it would have to be that I have to prove that I needed it. Number one, like, even when I was a kid. But not only that, if something bad happened to me, like I got in a fight, it immediately start with, what did you do? Did you do anything you know? And when you're a kid, you take that as blame. You think like, I didn't do anything. Like, you know what? I just came to you. You hit me. You know. I'm like, well, what did you do? And then my dad would always be like, well, did you hit him back? You know, because my dad grew up on the street. He was a Muay Thai fighter.
Wow.
So he'd be like, yeah, just hit him back, and he won't hit you anymore. And then my mom would be like, no, don't do that. That's not Buddhist. You know, you don't fight back. And my dad would be like, okay. And then later he'd be like, hit him in the stomach. There'll be no mark. You know, he'd be like hardcore like that. But so, you know, partially it came from my parents not giving me, you know, as a child, it's not so much fun to not have your parents necessarily go, you know, that's so, who did that? You know, do I need to talk to the principal? My parents weren't about that. They're like, what did you do? Did you do anything? Okay, you didn't do anything? What did you do to stop it? It was never about, so I got trained from a young age kind of like to have that. And I also grew up in a town that was all white. And I got a lot of like, what they call bullying now. Yeah. I just got harassed, you know. So it's all about like, hey, chink, you know. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not Chinese, but okay, you know, like go back to China. I'm like, well, from Thailand, but that's okay, you know. Well, I get what you're trying to do, you know. They would do stuff, and they're like people would come up, and you know, and it's not a great way to grow up necessarily because you don't feel particularly safe. Right. But then, like, you got to find a way to be safe inside yourself. You know what I mean? And then that I think, and also I am me as a personality. I like to fight. I'm a fighter. I've just always been that way. Like, are you looking at what's going on? Right. So when I grew up in my teenage, I got in like 100 fights. I mean, not just physical fights, but I would, you know, I would defend myself and I would stand up for myself with everybody, no matter who it was, you know. And so I think that's how I developed that kind of like attitude, like nothing's going to take me down. Yeah. I won't let you take me down, you know? Yeah. And that's why the Emotional House is so important for me, and that's probably why I started acting. Not probably, it is why. Because it was like, I needed to find a way to protect myself. And I was using only physical ways or verbal. I'd use my mouth or my body to protect myself. But I didn't understand that, you know, if you were okay with yourself emotionally and things didn't affect you as much, that's a better way to protect yourself because you don't have to fight anybody. Right. And, you know, when I first started acting, one of the acting coaches was like, you know, say your name. You know Carolyn Berry? Do you know her? Yeah, so Carolyn, she's, if anybody listening, if you know her, you've never heard of her, she teaches mostly commercials, but the first thing she does is she has you get up and say your name. So you're like, oh, hi, I'm Roy Vangtama. And she'd be like, is that a statement or a question? And I'll be like, it's my name. She's like, okay, sit down. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, sit down, you're done. Next class, say your name. Hi, I'm Roy Vangtama. She's like, is that a statement or question? I'm like, it's my name. She's like, sit down. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, I'm paying money. This lady, she's a bitch. You know, and I was like ranting and raving in my head. Third time come up, she's like, say your name. I'm like, Roy Vangtama? And she's like, are you not getting what I'm trying to tell you? You can't even say your name. And so she played it back. And she's like, say your name without the question. And I was like, I can't. And she's like, okay, you don't need me, you need therapy. You know, and I was like, how dare she? How dare she say that to me? You know, how dare she say that to me? And then I was like, after class, I was like, how should I do that? You know, how should I access that? And so she's like, read this book. It's called The Four Agreements. You should read this book first. Yeah. You know, and it's like the Four Agreements, right? Be impeccable with your word. Take nothing personally. Make no assumptions, and always do your best. And I was like, take nothing personally? Are you kidding me? Like, how am I? That like obviates everything I am, right? And then so through that process, I would go to therapy, and then every time I was supposed to be mad, I'd get angry in a situation, I would come up with a solution why I didn't have to be. And then, of course, as an actor, if you don't have access to anger, you're done.
Right.
You're done.
Right.
So then I wasn't able to play parts because I would, instead of being angry, I would cry. Like if it was called for it, like the scene called for anger, like whatever the lines were, I would start crying. And the coach would be like, what is, what's happened, this is, he's supposed to be angry here. Why are you sad? I'm like, I really don't know.
Wow.
He's like, it's real, but it's not the right feeling, Not that there's a right feeling, but,
right.
So that's how, and then I started thinking about this work and started going back and looking like, oh my gosh, this isn't just about me, and I'm an oncologist, I work with cancer patients.
Right.
As I talked to them, I found like almost 90% of them had issues in this area of anger.
Wow.
And of hurt and of pain and of trauma. Just by asking them, I'd be like, do you want to know? Because a lot of times they come and they say like, are you, why did this happen to me?
Victim mode.
Or they'd be just questioning, why did this happen? And how did I get cancer?
Right.
And I'd be like, well, it's genetics. It's it's also the way you eat. It's also this. And then I'd be like, but let me ask you a couple questions. You mind if I ask questions? And they'd be like, sure. And I'd be like, did you ever have any like abuse or trauma growing up? How do you have anybody die that is close to you, or you've been in any abusive relationships currently? Or 90% would have a yes to one of those questions.
Interesting.
And so then I was like, okay, there's something here. Now, but then I can't start talking about that because it's like, you can't just say that. Like, so what I'm basically saying is anger or resentment, that stuff can cause cancer, right? It's basically the underlying. So I had to go to the research to find out if this was true. And for years I couldn't find anything. Because I've been thinking this for like a decade or more, you know? And then I looked, and there's this huge study called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And they found that if you answered yes to, there are basically 10 questions. And if you answered 4 of the yeses, from like physical abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, sexual abuse, sexual neglect, or incarcerated member in the family, or domestic violence, there's 10 questions. But if you answered 4 of those positive, you had a doubling the risk of cancer.
Wow.
Independent of everything, independent of smoking.
Wow.
So people would be like, oh, but it probably made you start smoking, and then you got, no, independent of all those other things, this type of trauma is a risk factor, not just for cancer though, not just for cancer. 6 times the risk of depression, heart attack, stroke, 3,000 times the risk of suicide. Like something, I can't remember, I think it's 3,000 times.
Yeah.
It's incredible what this kind of trauma does, and it's kind of an unrecognized epidemic, because if you look at everybody, the number of people that score a 1 out of 10 is a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really deep.
I love where you're going with this, because I once read that depression, right, is energy repressed, right? And when we don't have the outlet to have that opportunity to express ourselves, then it just sits in our body. And what happens when it sits in your body, right? It starts to not just stagnate, but it starts to create these little cells, right?
You're totally right on with this. So I've talked to patients about the laws of motion. There's equal and opposite, the law of momentum, and F equals ma. We'll skip F equals ma because it's too esoteric. But momentum is what you're talking about. So, and equal and opposite. If something comes in, you have to let it flow out.
Cause and effect.
And if you don't, it's not just not sitting there, it's growing. So there's momentum in that energy in your body. And if that momentum, if we're talking about resentment, so define resentment.
Resentment. So resentment for me personally is essentially not liking a person, hating a person, holding on to, having a grudge.
Yes.
Not being able to tell the person that I don't like you,
yes.
right? Or express myself and have a good dialogue, have a good conversation about it to work things out. That opportunity there has completely shut.
It's shut.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. So what you've described then is something that happened in the past to you that has been unresolved, and it's still carrying with you in the present.
Right.
So if you think about someone in your life like you resent right now, if you think about the emotional component of that, it's actually anger. And the thought is like, this shouldn't have happened to me, essentially. Or they shouldn't have said that to me.
Right.
Or they shouldn't have done that to me. But it's not right now, because you're sitting with me right now.
Right.
Nothing's unless I'm talking too much, you're like, I can't believe he's talking this much. But other than that, right, there's nothing to resent right now.
Right.
But if I asked you, who do you resent right now? I bet you could pick somebody.
Exactly.
And so the process is you've held into the present this thought of this shouldn't happen to me. Now, think about this. If you were abused as a child and you were hurt and you weren't unable to process it, it's this feeling of this shouldn't have happened to me carried across decades.
Right.
And then, so what I talk about in the book is like, look, I'm not a therapist, but if this has happened to you, you need to find a way to access this feeling, to let it flow again. And with support, with group therapy, or at least journaling, or somebody really close to you that's able to be empathic with you, if you can access a way, like you said, to speak it, to get it out, to make it flow again, it's going to improve everything.
Right. Going back to resilience, this is how human beings develop resilience, right? Is the ability to go face on and deal with the situation, and then essentially creating a sort of like a layer in your emotional skin so that you can be able to deal with the next situation. It's funny, I spoke to speaking of Buddhists, like we're both Buddhists, right? So the philosophy of Buddhism is extremely ingrained in both of us, I feel like, right? I spoke to another Buddhist about karma, and bringing all this together in a way where karma is essentially your patterns in your life, right? When we don't have the opportunity or overlook the opportunity to deal with karma, it sits. But karma is always going to be there, right? It's just, how do you deal with it? And I think that's where resilience comes in, for us to be able to develop that, toughness in a way, and look at it with compassion, right? Empathy, because there's just really no point when, even Bruce Lee, right? He was always about like the flow. Yeah. Right? He wasn't, when somebody pushed, he pulled, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, going back to what were you saying, a momentum, that's really what it is, right? Yeah. So if we can create emotional momentum on a consistent basis, while creating, adding the layer of compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
Not just for the other person,
for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's, to now we're going metaphysical now, but I'll do it. So Jesus said,
Some
his
people
first,
like to say Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus, his first commandment is love the Lord thy God with all thy strength, all thy heart, all thy mind, all thy soul, and thy neighbor as thyself. That's the corollary, as thy neighbor as thyself. But if the part that he didn't say that you need to master before loving others is loving yourself, because we do treat everybody the way we love ourselves a lot. Like if you treat them badly, it's because that's the way you treat yourself.
Right.
So if you don't know how to be compassionate with yourself and have that empathy for the things that you've quote unquote done, or whatever you're guilty, shameful, or whatever about, if you don't have compassion for that aspect of you, if someone wrongs you, how are you supposed to have compassion for them? You won't. You'll blast them because you've never resolved the part that you've done. And so, the world or the universe will always bring to you the opportunity to deal with what you just said, your karma, and give you an opportunity to access it. But you also need to have created that momentum inside of you to allow that moment to be what it's supposed to be, an opportunity to love in that situation, right? If someone's wronged you, the greatest on this planet, they take it, because they know that it's part of the seed came from them somewhere, maybe lifetimes ago, or however you want to say it. But, our world isn't right like that right now. It's very divisive. If something's said to you, you mean, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you? But, if you look at really that, and it comes back to that message of responsibility and of resilience and of ownership, if you really look at those situations, it's an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity to take a different way and to show a different example. And it's like, I've been learning that myself. Right now, for some reason, I'm getting blamed a lot for things I didn't do. And that's the worst, because you didn't do it, right? No, I didn't. No, how dare you? I didn't do that, So there's an instinct it's almost like the child that wants to do that. But the adult is kind of like, you have to go, well, you didn't do that. No. Why are you acting that way?
Yeah.
Oh, because you're not really sure. You're not really sure, really, if you did or not, about whatever it is. So your child is like, or my child is like, you need to stand up and knock this person down, or else they're going to hurt you by the words they said about you missing a deadline or whatever it may be. So,
right.
So it's like, if you're listening, you're like, oh, that's me. I'm taking things like in the wrong way, not the wrong way, but it's a message of blame on yourself, and you're feeling guilty. And to stop that feeling, we attack.
Right. So it sort of sounds like the little Roy, the kid Roy.
Yeah.
With certain voices or guidances coming from whether it's parent or friends or the experiences coming up, because this situation that you feel like you're getting blamed. I don't want to psychoanalyze.
Of course, no, you're right though.
But it's sort of coming back, because it's another opportunity to not close it, but let it flow.
Let it flow, and that's why I was like, okay, I have to practice what I preach here, and then I gotta see what this is, And so that's why I came into, how do you do that? How do you do that in the moment? So I started to really be aware in those situations what was happening, and first thing I noticed is I get very tense. As soon as a person starts talking to me, and you can feel it right away. You're an actor, you can feel when someone's got it out for you. They start to look, they have this looking at you, and they're about to. You can feel this energy tube coming at you, and you're like, immediately I would tense. I'm like, okay, that's number one. I can't do. Okay, and then start to try to get out of the way of that. Release that feeling. So it's a physical impulse, right? And then the second thing I thought was danger. It was a sense of danger. Like I wasn't safe, right? And so when you look at it from a biology standpoint, that's the amygdala. That's the deep part of the brain that's fight or flight. So that was a really great part of our brains when there's bears and lions and tigers chasing us. Right. Not so great when the person in your office next door comes and yells at you for something, right? So that part still gets triggered though. It's like, boom, you're in fight or flight. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm totally reacting like this is danger. And I almost get a visual, like for me, I get a visual component where things get a little hazy, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then refocusing my brain, so then that's the first thing I do is I'll tense or relax. I'll do this tension and then allow myself to relax. Then I'll take my mind away from the deep part of the brain. So there's a technique I teach people to do. So I don't know if you know this, but so you can't really consciously use two parts of your brain at the same time. So if you're focused on this danger aspect, like I need to defend myself, you're in the deep brain. You're in like the primitive old brain. And so what you need to do is take yourself into the cortical brain. And so if you inhale and move your mind, just physically visualize your energy going to the cortex of your brain, the outer portion, it'll shut down the amygdala.
Interesting.
So you can actually use biology to your advantage. This is what I'm talking about.
Wow.
So even if you've done decades of you reacting like you're going to fight or you're going to run, fight or flight.
Yeah.
If you've already been doing that, that's okay.
Right.
There's a habit there. So you just need to put a new one in. You don't need to take the old one away.
Right.
Just leave it there. And just put the new one in, which is, okay, I'm going to relax. I'm going to pull energy into the cortex of my brain through a breath. And then you can think the word peace or something that's peaceful to you, peace. Or you can even visualize something beautiful to you. So there's the research in this.
Yeah.
If you visualize something like a sunset or something that's beautiful to you, that you unarguably is beautiful,
Right.
it'll short circuit this whole system.
Wow. That's great. Wow, that's great because I mean that's really part of I love the way you explained the shifting of minds, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's true because when you it's like that story about which wolf will you feed, right? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And so if we decide to feed the wolf, it's like the hero wolf, right? Mm-hmm. Then that's the direction we're going to move into. And ultimately, really, I'm a strong believer in modernizing the mind, the brain, where, there's a lot of information out there, but it's really pick and choose because we're in this information era that there's so much coming at us. We really have to decide, which pieces of info will help us become a better person, right?
Right.
So kind of like tying in your book, Healing Before You Cured, what I'm curious about are a couple things. What was your process for writing the book, right?
Okay.
And the second thing is, the Healing Before You're Cured is so phenomenal on many levels because for me, when I first read that title, I just thought, whoa, like this thing will not only just go deep, but it will also open, right? Mm-hmm. So can you explain those two things?
Sure, man. Well, that's great. That's exactly why I chose that title, actually, because, curing is something that, if you look in the definition, it's something has to come out from outside of yourself. Something has to cure you.
Yeah. Something
has to fix you. Healing actually happens from within. Healing is an internal process. If you look up the word, it's like this was healed. It starts from the inside. And so my whole intention was put these things into place before you have to be cured. Put healing into place, put these patterns into place before you have to go and get help from somebody else. Do this yourself. That's where the name comes from.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And then the process was actually really interesting because I've grown up, and you said, you alluded, you were both Buddhists. I grew up, my family is Buddhist, right? But I also went to Catholic school. So I had these two super disparate influences where Buddhism says, this is your karma and it's your responsibility because you created all of it. All your actions in the past, even if you can't even see them, from past thousands of lives, whatever it has been, has led you to this point. And all your actions, so it's all your responsibility. Where in Catholicism is like, look, you have this original sin, this is your only life, this is your original sin, you rolled in, you have no power, put yourself in surrender at the hands of Jesus Christ, right? That's the two models. They're completely opposite.
Right.
So then it's like, I was like, well, okay, I don't know what to do about those two things, right? But I know something. I know that the answer for me has never been in extremes. It's always been in the middle, no matter what. And you see that if you read the book, you'll see that, I'm very much in the middle. And so I wanted to, look, there's $7 trillion of research in Western medicine.
Wow.
7,000 years of experience minimum in the Eastern, right?
Right.
Why are you using only one of them? Yeah. Use both. Use both. Like we, for example, so that's why I came up with this idea because I was like, look, breast cancer, for example, stage 1 breast cancer, we're at 92% cure rate, 93%. Why would you go to Mexico to deal with early stage breast cancer to do a holistic therapy, right? You don't need it. You have a 93%. Add it. Add the rest once you've taken the Western treatment. You're going to get this cure rate. You're going to bonus up. You're going to win. But if you go to Mexico, do a vegan diet with a coffee enema and listen to music and take herbs, I don't know what percentage you're going to be at. You're not going to be at 93%. You can do all of that with Western medicine. Right. You don't need to go to Mexico to do a vegan diet and get a coffee enema. You can go to anybody. Well, if in LA, okay, if you're listening across the country, you can't get a coffee enema anywhere. in LA, you can get it pretty much wherever you want. but you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like this thing of understanding where Western medicine is good. And then also, though, there's, for example, there's diseases, and it goes ITP. It's idiopathic, thrombocytopenic purpura. And I've met somebody who had, like, oh, I feel so much better. They told me I have ITP, and now I know what it is. And I'm like, okay. And I had to go home and, like, before I said anything, I'm like, okay. Idiopathic means we don't know. It means we don't know the cause of. Thrombocytopenic means you have low platelets. Purpura means you have purple spots. So that is the name of the disease you have. I don't know why you have low platelets and purple spots. That's what they've told you have.
Huh.
Okay? So you take on a label for something that we don't even know what it is. We don't know how to deal with it. Right. And what we deal with that is we give like suppressives, like steroids and things like that, to try to help, and drugs that actually kind of try to reformat or reset the immune system. So if you have a disease like that and they're going to give you a pretty toxic therapy when we're not really sure why you have it in the first place, is it a great idea just to do that on its own? It might be okay to do, but you have to really think about that. You have to really say, okay. And that's where I came up with the idea of the book. So I'm like, look, it's not wrong to take Western therapy for ITP. It's not wrong at all. But you have to understand that we don't know why it's caused. So there might be more investigation that you need to do to really find a solution. And that's where I was like, okay, well, what is the solution? And I was like, oh, well, is it a gene structure, this or that? I'm like, well, actually, I think it's in a different area. And I always talk to people with different diseases like cancer. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're always victimizing themselves. They're always being the person that's taking care of the other person. They're always a caretaker. And I started to see these patterns of mental thought. And then I started exploring from the mental thought. I was like, well, looking behind them, there was extreme resentment. It's like, oh yeah, it was always my mother, always made me be the second, take care of my brothers and sisters. I never got to go to prom. But it's okay. But it's okay, they'll say. It's okay, right? I'm like, is it? Because I didn't say it wasn't, and you just told me it was okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, now it's the emotional house. Now I was like, oh, it's profound resentment. And then I found this data for the resentment. Then I was like, well, that can't be all that we do is just pull things out and feel them. And then I started looking, okay, well then the brain needs to be reformatted. And that's where meditation comes in. By expanding the neural pattern network by meditation. And you talked about that, the devilish voice that actually is originated in the brain in the DMN, default mode network. It's a group of areas of the brain that when you meditate, they start to quiet down. If you look at functional MRI, they quiet down. So I was like, okay. So the answer to my question of staying in the middle, of healing and curing, was never in just the physical, was never just in the mental, was never just in the emotional, was never just in the spiritual. It's in all of them. And it's the interconnection of all of them that people need to access a little at a time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too, because considering the day of age we're living in now, there's so many, like the world's basically opened up.
Yes.
To such a huge amount of just opportunities to really just find what you really like. It's not like we're back in the 1920s when we're stuck in whatever world you're in and you have only your village to deal with. But I think in the world that we're living in now, it's really an opportunity to not just pick and choose, but to really absorb what's right for you.
Yes.
Right? Because I don't honestly don't feel that people are taking advantage of that. They not that there's anything wrong with, like you said, not that there's anything wrong with going to a Western doctor, but you should, open it up to several different opinions.
Yeah.
And really find out for yourself, not just, hey, let's not just pill pop, or let's not just find the fastest route to healing ourselves, but really just enjoying that process of finding the right information to heal yourself.
And you're totally I love the way you're thinking, because it is about that, and that's where, I'm like harping on ownership, but this is the thing. It's like so I'll tie in a couple things here. So like the reason why there's an information age, right? If you look at yoga and the cycles of the ages, I'm going way, way to esoteric literature now, but if you look at the yoga cycles, there's 12,000 year cycles, okay? And it starts with a cycle that's like a golden age, and then it comes downward in consciousness, and then it hits the bottom, and then it starts to come up. And this is the age we're coming in now. It's called Dwapara Yuga, and it's an age where the consciousness is expanding. There is a lot more information, but there is not the wisdom to use it. That's what you're seeing. That's what you're frustrated with. Because like, why is everybody focusing on these things when they should be focusing over here? It's because the wisdom's not there as a community of a planet to actually know. Like, I don't want to say any names, but if you look at the current president, not to date this podcast, I want to keep it like evergreen for you, but if you look at leadership in the world, not just the United States, but there's a few certain leaders that are clearly not looking out for the best of the country they're in. Clearly. I mean, in at least in my opinion, for many respects, as an example of a leader, let's just say that. Forget about the policies. This is an example of a type of person. Would you want to be leading your country? You'd say, upstanding, integrity, honesty, takes responsibility, stands up for the weak. If you look at that definition of a leader, a lot of people are like, 100%, that's who I want to lead, but that's not what happened, So if you look at it from that lens, you're like, from the lens of the Yuga, you're like, there's a lot of information, but people are confused on what to choose. That's basically what has happened. It's right. Like, it's who's louder, who's right. Who's more extreme, who's crying out from the noise, and the voice of kind of like balance is not respected right now.
Right.
Because it's not loud, it's not flashy,
I mean, there's a saying where, if you're going to choose a religion of some sort, right? Religion is supposed to serve you, not the other way around.
Right.
Same thing when we're in the midst of looking up to a leader. A leader is supposed to serve you and not the other way around, right?
Right.
And if you want to look at it as a sort of bigger spectrum, because there are we're all citizens of the U.S., or if you're a citizen of whatever country you're in, right? That leader doesn't run you. Like, the citizens run the country, but the leader is supposed to serve the citizens. And this kind of ties in with, like, going back to health, right?
Yeah.
And going back to your book, it really just comes down to this. It's we, like, our cells are like the citizens, right?
Yeah.
Okay? But and us as one human being, we're supposed to serve those cells in a way. Right?
Beautiful.
Right?
I've never made that analogy, but I love it, man.
Cool, man.
That's exactly what this book is really about, though. It's like, take back that mantle and understand that there is information out there in you that you can access even without going on the internet, though. Because you can tell, and that's part what I get in the spiritual house. I talk about the power of intuition. And that is the knowing that you know what's best for you on a very deep level.
Right.
And that is mostly developed through meditation. Because if you can't quiet the voice of what you call the devilish voice, the terrorist, you're going to be reacting with fear. You're not going to be making decisions that are for your deepest benefit in those moments, which is how all sales work. Get it now. It's gonna be gone. Right. You know what I mean? And so, like, if you can divorce yourself of that kind of pattern and kind of go into a pattern like, is this good for me? What do you think? Ask yourself. This is what I tell people to do. It's like, just sit there. When you're relaxed, you're quiet. Well, what do we think about that? And have a conversation with you. And then you'll find out that you'll have the answer.
Right. It's funny because the whole craze with superfoods.
Yeah.
I mean, I even fell into the whole craze of superfoods, right? When it first came out. But due to my personal experience with health, I've definitely learned to really do my due diligence before jumping into something. Because, for instance, what was something that came out like a few years ago? I think it was. It might have been like chlorella or something
spirulina
like that. Spirulina or something to that matter, right?
Yeah.
When it first came out, people were just jumping on it because they were looking up to somebody, right? That knew they were a leader in that industry, right? And they were able to talk about it, which is great, right? But I think what's really forgotten in the salesmanship is the matter of spreading it out in a way. What I'm trying to say is that the matter of using things in moderation, right, and not doing something like, for instance, Lion's Mane. That's a really good tool, but you see people. I mean, I have friends that take it every single day.
I don't even know what it is, dude.
Lion's Mane essentially is a medicinal mushroom.
Yeah, okay, I know.
Yeah,
what it is.
so it's great for the brain.
Yeah.
Right. And it really charges up the synapses in your brain, right? And it's great. I've tried it out, and I did the whole 1 month testing, and but eventually it was. I'm like, dude, it doesn't work on me anymore, right? Your body gets acclimated to it, right?
Yeah.
So, but there is that, there is the extremism of going all in.
Right.
So, with your book, how is that going to, like, with your book, how is that going to help your readers, especially ones that really want to shift something right, in their life, right?
Great, dude. This is an amazing question. It's really kudos to that question. I love it. So one thing that I want to comment about what you said is like, yeah, humans love to be human beings. If you see a pattern, they love to have a quick solution, right? That's the hook always. Like, so there's one main drive in life. Every human wants this. It's very simple. They want to be happy and they want to avoid pain. That's it. Every human has the exact same bottom line. Be happy, avoid pain. And if you can do that quickly, that's even better. And if I don't have to work at it, even better, right? So if you look at and I'm really interested in helping people make change. So it's like, I started to look at this. I'm like, okay, how do we get that kind of vibe in this without being disingenuous, right? How do you get people to realize that change can happen really quickly? And this is the thing. Number one, focus on the area you need most. That's why I have this quiz. If they're listening now, if you go to www.royvmd.com, it'll take you to our free email list. And you'll get the quiz and you'll be able to see what area you need to work in. And it'll give you solutions right there. So it's about picking an area that you can do work in right now that'll benefit you the most. I love the Lion's Mane thing because it's this. In the world right now, it's all about nutrition, right? It's all about, so no one can see on the podcast, but if you look at a curve of change, it's a dose response, which means that it starts flat, curves up steeply, and goes flat at the top. So it's flat at the bottom, curves up steeply, flat at the top. Most people who are nutrition like junkies, they're already maximizing, they're at 90+%, they're at the top of the curve. So by adding Lion's Mane, you're just going from 90 to 93, or 93 to 96. But if you put the exact same amount of money and energy into starting at the bottom of the curve, you get a huge benefit by focusing on one little thing in one area you actually need to work in, right? So for example, like, emotional house. I'll make it real simple for you, for people listening too. Like, what practice has been really good for helping people get out of victimization, get out of that traumatic place, is a gratitude practice. It's free. If you write down 5 things a day that you're grateful for, I call it 5 stars a day. Just get out a piece of paper every day, commit to, for 7 days, writing down 5 things that you're grateful for. That's it, at the end of your day. Why does it work? It works, and it's scientifically proven to improve your immune system, improve your sense of anxiety, your sense of well-being, your overall happiness. Why? Because you're remembering something that was good in your day. You're re-experiencing. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the original event and the replay. So you're getting to re-experience something good in your body. You're sending endorphins through your body at the end of your day before you go to sleep. It'll help you sleep. It'll help you process things. It'll give you a perspective spiritually. Oh, my day wasn't all bad. No matter what, you know? Like, a lot of people are like, I had one, I don't have anything to be grateful for. I'm like, really? What about, not to say anything, but aren't you breathing? And they're like, yeah. Does it hurt when you breathe? No. Do you know that I've met a person right before you that can't breathe because of pain? Because it hurts so much in their ribs because of a tumor? It's like, oh, do you think you'd be grateful for that? Okay, yeah. Okay. How about the fact that you walked in here? Do you know that, did you see the lady in the wheelchair over there? You know? So all of a sudden, you start to realize, oh my God, there's so much to be grateful for. This bottle of water, who put the bottle together? Who put the water in there? All of a sudden, you have this practice you can use, and it's simple. It's free. I can't charge you for it because there's nothing to charge for. It's just you being grateful.
Yeah.
And so this is how I want. I suggest people to start. Find something small. Do it. Commit to doing it every day in the area you need to work in most. So if a lot of people listening, like, you know, I want to work in this emotional house or the spiritual house, I don't want to meditate, I'm not ever going to do it. Like, okay, then do the gratitude practice, you know, do that. Start there, do 7 days. Once you've done 7 days, do 7 more, you know. Commit to 7 first. Don't commit to a year. I hate when people say, you have to commit to a year of this. Like, look, you haven't done the first week yet. You know what I mean? And your brain will actually forget. Right. You know why? Because it's too much.
Right.
So that's that thing. And you know, people listening, you know, Americans are really into nutrition, right? Which is great. But if you break down, you look at my system, there's 4 houses: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you look at the one house, the physical, I break it down to 3. There's sleep, exercise, and nutrition. So if you kind of just go on my formula, 25% is physical. There's 3 parts. If you say they're equal, which is I think they are, so that's 25% divided 3 ways is about 8.3%. So nutrition is only 8.3% of your health. But you're spending your whole day doing that. And if you're just doing nutrition and exercise, you're doing 16.6% of your health, right? And I'll prove it to you. Because if you look at, I didn't mean to point at you, but I'll prove it to you. If you look at breast cancer, breast cancer, #1 diagnosed cancer in women, #2 killer overall. If you look at the research on nutrition, there's hundreds of millions of dollars spent researching nutrition and breast cancer specifically. There is no study that shows that nutrition on its own affects the outcome of breast cancer. None. This is hundreds of studies. Nutrition on its own has not been shown independently, mind you. So people are like, oh, you're listening, like, oh, that's the Western, they want you to take their drugs as a conspiracy. I'm like, no, that's not the reason. The reason is because nutrition is only 8% of your whole health. Okay? If you look at it that way, and there's another study though, same area of research, breast cancer, add nutritionist, add group counseling, add journaling, add 90 minutes of meditation a week, add exercise. That combo shows the overall survival benefit for those patients.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So now, and guess what? You can access all those for free too if you want. You can do journaling, you know. Group therapy, you can go for cancer patients. There's free counseling. There's a cancer support network all over the United States. You can go for free. They don't charge you, you know. Exercise, you don't need help. You can just start walking.
Right.
You know, nutrition, just start eating 50% greens. You can access this information. You can do it right now. You don't need anybody. You don't need to buy anything off the TV. You don't need Dr. Oz. You don't need anybody.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, essentially, the analogy really is, you know, a table has 4 legs, and if one leg is off, you know, how is the table going to stand, right? Yeah. And if your body is the table, and these quadrants or boxes, well, what did you call them?
Houses.
houses. Sorry about that.
You keep changing my visual. Now it's a table with legs. Before it was boxes.
So sorry
with
about
four
that.
legs.
So
no,
sorry about that.
I'm kidding. No, but you're right. You're right.
But yeah. So if one house, if one, but if one house is completely off, then like how are you going to have that foundation in your life, right? It's interesting because the whole craze with nutrition is obviously phenomenal in the U.S.
Yeah.
And going back to the gratitude that you were saying, it's really just an opportunity to feed that brain, that goodness in your brain when you go to bed, so that your brain can focus on that and not the flight or flight, right? That you were mentioning. And I think having gratitude, whatever time of the day, but especially when you go at night, because you're going to sleep and you're really solidifying that whatever your subconscious, whatever the unconscious, whatever it's soaking up at that night during their sleep. It's important because when you wake up, you want to be refreshed. Also, I believe for people that are intimidated or overwhelmed by meditation, I believe that meditation is really an opportunity to honor your thoughts. So for people that, I tell my friends all this all the time, if you're intimidated by meditation, by the act of just sitting there and just honing in on your thoughts, if we can just embrace it, if we can just honor it for 5 minutes a day, right? If we can just do that, just honor it, because it just goes back to being grateful in a way. If we can just be able to sit there and just go, you know what, I love this. This happened today. I can't believe I yelled at this person. I can't believe I said this shit to this person. I can't believe this happened. But you go, you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be a new day. I'm just going to refresh myself. There's no guilt, man. There's no guilt. We got to move forward.
Well, that's beautiful. And that the word that's coming to my mind as you're speaking is introspection. It's like looking at your day objectively, though.
Right.
Like saying, okay, how did today go? So in the, going back to the spiritual house, in the Bhagavad Gita, basically the Bible of Hinduism, the first line is, he says, how fares ye, Sanjaya? Basically, he says, how did your day go? That's the very first line of the Gita. So that's how important it is to take assessment of your day. And it's not about fixing better for tomorrow necessarily. It's saying, oh yeah, tomorrow's a new day. But it's more just being aware of what happened. Because really, this is what we're talking about health. It's like if something traumatic happened to you in the past, it's not about you have to get out, fix it, heal it, put a Band-Aid on it. Just be aware that it's there. Your body but your body heals itself, man. It heals itself. It doesn't need your help. It needs you to get out of the way. It needs you to stop blocking things. It needs you to stop going, that didn't happen to me. That didn't happen to me. Nope, I'm good, I'm great, I'm fine. It needs you to stop getting in the way, because then it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. Okay, so I'll put it in my hip. I'll just put all that energy in the hip for now, because we can't, obviously he doesn't want to do anything about it, so I'll do what he says. Okay. But if you get out of the way, let things flow at the end of your day, like, you know what? Jeff, he wasn't really nice to me in that conversation, yeah. That was that was sad, Okay. That's all you have to do. The problem is we don't say that. We go, oh yeah, okay, the Jeff thing, yeah, that wasn't cool. Let's move on from that, and then, let's.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of like we get in our own way of letting what is real happen, and that's, if you look at the word disease, dis-ease, right? We have this lack of ease around what is actually happening, and we distract ourselves by, if I just looked at the data, what is the average number of hours of media consumed on average by the average American right now per day?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I'm going to say, average-wise, I'm going to say 14 hours a day.
14 hours a day? You're insane. Where's your time for work? It's actually 5.5 hours a day of media, of TV, internet, phone, for entertainment consumption. It's 5.5 hours for news. Yeah. That's 35 hours a week. That's basically a full-time job, or almost a full-time job.
Crazy.
So if you think about that, and you realize how much we're distracting ourselves.
Right.
And you're telling me, so I'll tell people, oh, what do you think about meditation or like a journal? It's like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, okay, so I asked you to do 5 minutes of meditation, or 5 minutes of just sitting there.
Yeah.
You don't have time for 5 minutes, but you have time for 5.5 hours of TV.
Right.
So you see how much we're getting in the way?
Right.
I'm not even saying don't watch 5.5. I'm just saying take 10 minutes of it. Give me 10 minutes for you,
right.
you know? And you wonder why your body got sick. You wonder why things went wrong in your relationship. You didn't take 10 minutes. You didn't take 5 minutes.
Right. So in a way, healing before you're cured is really just an opportunity that you're sort of sharing, and you want people to essentially be aware of the moment and embrace it. That's all you really want from this book, right?
Yeah,
I mean, can I say that? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, because change happens. You know, there's a word in Japanese. It's called kaizen, and it means continuous daily improvement. And if you took any motto for your life, that would be it, kaizen, because it's literally not doing everything all at once.
Right.
It's just doing a little bit, building that momentum day after day. And don't tell anybody about it. Just, I have this little thing I'm going to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This little gratitude prayer, a little couple-minute meditation, you know, before I go out for my day, or, you know, or at lunch or whatever.
Right.
And you just start building this thing. And it starts, you know, Native American culture, they talk patterns. They don't talk about curing, they don't talk about anything. They talk about patterns, putting a new pattern in. That's what we want to do. We want to shift out these old patterns, but not by making them go away. We just want to put energy into a new one. And then sooner or later, that'll be your automatic choice, because it'll become a habit.
I love that. Wow, that was great. Wow. That actually stopped me in my tracks.
That's awesome.
That was great. Let's dude, honestly, I would love to have another conversation with you later down in the future, as you progress with the results of this book, and to see how many people you have helped. Yeah, I mean, this has been great, man.
Thank you, man.
Is there something, if there's something you just want to leave the audience right now?
Yeah, I'll tell. It's a story, actually. This lady came up to me. We did the book launch, and she came up to me. She was like, she heard me talk, and I'd said everything I said about ownership. And at the end, she said, "Oh, I want to come see you. I want you to be my doctor." I'm like, "Well, do you have cancer?" And then she's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, then I can't be your doctor." But I was like, she's like, "No, but I want to come see you. I want to work on this stuff." I go, "Well, I was like, the whole point of what I'm doing is that you can do it for yourself. You know, that's what I'm trying to teach." And she's like, "No, I want to come see you." And then I thought this when I was talking to her. I go, "You know what? You don't need me. You need you. You don't need me. You need you. You need you to be on your side." And so that's the thought I would like people to kind of take in. It's like, you need you. You need to be on your team. You need to get out of your own way. Just be on your side. You need you. You don't need me. Okay, I'll coach. You know, I'll give you some tips or whatever. But really, it's about you. It's about you taking your side. You need you.
Wow. Roy, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much,
sure,
man.
Bro.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people find your book?
They can go to Amazon. It's there in print, ebook, and audiobook. I narrate it myself there. You can just go to you can get on our free email list. If you you can text the word HEAL, HEAL, to 345-345, and it'll put you right on our free email list to get into this quiz section. Or you can even go to www.royvmd.com. That'll put you on our email list. If you want the book, you can go to mdroyv.com. So everything's getting confusing. But yeah, you have Healing Before You're Cured on Amazon.
Sweet.
And then I'm on Instagram, Roy Vong Tama, MD.
Sweet, man. So I'm going to text you right after this, man.
All right, dude.
All right, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Catch you guys later. Bye.